My name's Karen Smith, and thank you so much to WDI Australia New Zealand for having us on tonight. We are the Affiliation of Australian Women's Action Alliances. I'll tell you a bit more about who's involved directly. I'm going to first of all give a little bit of background to the AY-waah story, what we cover, our organisation status, some of the benefits that we see of affiliation between the groups. I'll also touch upon handling consensus and some of the actions that we do. Then we'll have some of our sisters from our various groups, our affiliate groups, come in and talk about some of the main issues confronting their states in terms of gender ideology and other things that we're also involved with, such as fighting prostitution and sex trafficking. And then I'll just come back and finish up with some of the submissions and letters that we've been putting together. In the first instance, however, I'll just show you, share our screen, and there's our details if you want to jot them down if you're at all interested. As Janet said in the introduction, we are the Affiliation of Australian Women's Action Alliances. We're women's liberation groups committed to the protection and advancement of women and girls. We're working on the understanding, of course, that sex is a biological fact with material consequences for females. We cover a whole bunch of things, gender identity, genderism, gender identity ideology, pornography, prostitution, sex trafficking, reproductive exploitation, control over reproductive sovereignty and rights. We came about in 2017, we started to organise. We really kind of kicked off with our first group, the Women's Action Alliance Canberra, in 2018. And at that time, we weren't out particularly about gender identity. We kept that kind of in the box and just dealt with a whole bunch of other things. We met monthly, started to build our group. Then the pandemic hit, we lost our meeting venue. Towards the end of 2020, however, we did start to get a few more queries about from women asking if we were gender critical. So that's the point at which we thought, yes, we had better refocus and make it explicit that we are gender critical. So we did that, and that's the Canberra group, Women's Action Alliance Canberra. So we got together, started to build the Women's Action Alliance Canberra, and then towards the end of last year, we started to get some interest from sisters in Tasmania. So we decided to trial a bit of an affiliation, and we started with Women's Action Alliance Tasmania. And the women down there have been doing fantastic work in terms of all of this business. So after that, and earlier this year, we then started to get some interest from Queensland. So we started up a Queensland Women's Action Alliance. And once we had the three groups together, we thought now we've probably got enough to get together a proper model and some guidelines for women in other areas, other states, cities, regions who might want to follow the model and get on board. So that's when we came up with AY-waah, the Affiliation of Australian Women's Action Alliances. And in that, we still cover everything: gender identity, ideology, prostitution, sex trafficking, pornography, reproductive exploitation. But part of our model is that each of our groups really want to be seen as serious, sensible organisations with good standing in the community, organisations that use fact and evidence, reason, rationality, courtesy, compassion, all these good things. They're the things that we use to make our case. And what we do is we target or engage those who've got legislative authority, maybe some political accountability, social responsibility for the safeguarding, the protection, the advancement of women and girls. They're the people who we target strategically. We're not aligned with the left or the right or with any particular religious perspective or a particular belief system. All of the women in our groups, we recognise, respect their autonomy, their boundaries, their comfort levels. So all of the women in our groups, they choose for themselves what they want to be involved with, how, to what degree. We do not work in competition with other non-AY-waah groups, and instead we really like others to come to us, and we approach them also with opportunities to work collaboratively, especially if there are matters of joint significance. So that's a really important part of our model as well. Where in terms of our organisation status, we're not incorporated, we're not not-for-profits, we're not associations, we don't have charity status. And we've chosen that because it allows for us to be flexible. It gives us anonymity, means we don't have to have formal organisational structures. We don't need to have fees or insurance. We don't have to have constitutions. There's no tax implications, no financial reporting obligations. So a lot of that admin is cut through. And it doesn't limit our political and our campaigning activities because, you know, that's the case for charities. The benefits of some of this kind of affiliation are that we've got very horizontal structure. There's no one group in charge. We're on the same page as regards our model and our ethos. Our groups can focus then locally and have independence on what's important to them. And some of our sisters will talk about what's happening and the main issues confronting them directly. But what it also allows us to do is it allows us to come together as a national group. So that means we can co-sign things under one national banner, gives more weight to national submissions, sharing coordination of resources and things of that nature. So when groups become affiliated, they all agree on some of the main points and the general approach in our manifesto and our guidelines, general agreement on what to target and not to target. And we also have guidelines on how to gain consensus within groups and between the groups. And we've got representative level structures. That's about our only structure in place. And we've got some of the other representatives from other AY-waah affiliate groups here tonight. We've got also guidelines for recruitment and vetting. And of course, vetting is important when we're dealing with people who might be coming to us with not such good intentions. So we've got guidelines for that. We've got guidelines for how the tone and manner that we have in our submissions. We've got social media guidelines. So we've kind of put together a whole package so that women, when they come to us, they know exactly what they're signing up for. A part of the model is that, well, we've got two main parts. We do submissions, letter writing, all the boring, unsexy stuff, if you like. But then we've got the interesting stuff like actions, which, again, we've got guidelines for those. They need to be legal, safe, properly planned, risk managed, strategic, highly visible, and things like that. So that's kind of how we operate. Each does its own thing in terms of internal communication and how it's set up. Some use Signal, some use WhatsApp, some use Messenger. Again, that's just an overview from us in Canberra and for the whole sisterhood that we're trying to build here. I'm going to come off share now and we will hear from Emma, who's our representative from the Queensland Women's Action Alliance. She's going to talk for a couple of minutes on just some of the major issues confronting Queensland at the moment.
Thank you, Karen. Queensland Women's Action Alliance spans a very large distance from Brisbane to Townsville. And we've already heard from Sue about the amazing work done by Women Up in Brizzy, and I'm so proud of them. I suppose the most pressing concern in Queensland at the moment is the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Bill that was passed in June and will probably come into effect beginning of next year. It allows people from 16 and over, well, 16 onwards, to be able to change their sex on their birth certificate with just a statutory declaration and a statement. The second thing that is a concern to us is the Criminal Code amendment, which is the Serious Vilification and Hate Crimes bill being amended. Under that legislation, any public display or distribution or publication of prohibited symbols which can cause a member of the public to feel menaced, harassed and offended, I had to read that, that was a mouthful, will come into effect. I don't think it's been passed yet, but it is in the process of going through. And this raises a number of concerns, not because we plan on doing anything hateful, but because they, as Sue mentioned, they do see women's groups. And in fact, in some of the Greens literature, they do say that they're concerned about feminist groups in Queensland. So they're viewing women and the definition of woman as being hate speech. So we're a bit concerned about the future for actions in Queensland and really trying to get a wriggle on to do as many as we can. So at present, we're doing actions in Brisbane and in Townsville, and we would really like to spread that to other regional centres because we are very spread out. So if anyone's watching and they want to join, let me know.
Thanks so much there, Emma. And yes, you can get in touch with us via that email address that I sent out earlier, and we'll put you in touch with Qua. I'm going to sling now to Sue from AY-waah, which is the Women's Action Alliance, Western Australian Women's Action Alliance. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Karen. AY-waah is a newly established chapter which started in May this year, and it's finding its feet with 5 members in Perth and the surrounding suburbs. We haven't quite got everything together, and we feel that's okay. We're grateful members of the mothership, which is basically you, Karen, working up to being more active members of the supportive whole alliance. In response to what's happening currently, we do find that we're working towards a few things here in WA. And here is where I confess that the woman who is arguably the brains of our outfit in WA, but who can't be here tonight, is largely responsible for what I have in front of me, my cheat sheet. So I'll carry on with it. Something relates to the WA Equal Opportunity Act. The Law Reform Commission undertook a broad review of the Equal Opportunity Act and proposed changes following that community consultation. The Equal Opportunity Act review report was tabled in August 22. Changes announced by the majority Labor government included some much-needed amendments, like the removal of the disadvantage test required for sexual harassment complaints and extension of protection to female DV victims. But others are less welcome, including particularly a form of self-ID and the reframing of sexual orientation and related protections to be based on gender rather than sex. Since WA only brought in protection on the basis of sexuality 20 years ago, this is not welcome news, and we know this will most disadvantage lesbians who are at the pointy end of the sex and gender wars. Number 2, another item we're watching out for opportunities to act on is the coming potential decriminalisation of sex work. We expect that this may be coming soon following changes in other states, and we're very worried about the effects of this, given what has happened in other countries and Australian states. We know that what is usually put forward as protecting women in the sex trade and promoting their empowerment actually results usually in less choice and worse exploitation. Number 3, WA's abortion laws, already the worst in the country, are being renewed with a proposal to remove abortion as an offence under the Criminal Code, that is criminalising abortion. Other changes proposed are the removal of mandatory counselling, changes to how later term abortions are managed, as well as changing the gestational limit from the current 20 weeks to 23 weeks. And last, WA is developing its first sexual violence prevention and response strategy in response to the ongoing and widespread problem of sexual violence. Submissions are due by mid-September, and AY-waah, that's us, plans to submit to ensure that the focus on male violence against women and girls, particularly within the marginalised communities of women and girls, remains central to this strategy. Finally, on behalf of our WA group, I'm going to take this opportunity to express our gratitude publicly for the generous opportunity that Karen, aka AY-waah, has provided to us here in the West. We've been offered the chance to contribute to an amazing professional national alliance of women that is dedicated to the safeguarding, protection and advancement of women and girls. We're very isolated, well, sometimes we're isolated over in WA, and it's fantastic to be offered this opportunity to join a national alliance. The alliance, we can see, whose mission, spirit, principles and guidelines focus on respect in the use of facts and evidence, an alliance that allows our WA group to be independent while also offering us every support. Thank you, Karen. That's me.
Good on you. Thanks so much, Sue, from West Australian Women's Action Alliance, and the mothership is very happy to have you on board. I'm going to swing now to Lauren from the Women's Action Alliance Tasmania. Lauren, over to you.
Thanks, Karen. So Women's Action Alliance Tasmania started at the beginning of this year. We're geographically dispersed across the state. So we've been focused on actions like submissions, freedom of information requests. We've been involved in some guidance on sex and gender in schools, writing blogs, letters to the editor, those sorts of things. So not so much physical actions, because that's a bit difficult, like our sisters in some of the other chapters. And we were active already before the Let Women Speak event in March, which was fairly awful. I'm sure many of you have seen the footage from Hobart. I was there, but the upside of that was that it activated a bit of a community in Tasmania that WAA engages with, focused on women's rights. And that includes our sisters in Women Speak Tasmania, who we've been working collaboratively with, as Karen said earlier. But still, the situation in Tasmania is not good. So we've had both Claire Chandler and Louise Elliott taken to our state anti-discrimination commissioner for fairly, benign views on sex and gender. And we've also had Jessica Hoyle's case where, lesbians can't meet with a single-sex event because there's no protection for sex in our state anti-discrimination legislation. We also have a very hostile political situation at the state level. So politicians like Cassie O'Connor and Rosalie Woodruff from the Greens, who I was standing a few metres away from at the Let Women Speak event, but on the other side. And also I saw Rebecca White, the state Labor leader, and Ella Haddad, a Labor MP, who were standing not too far away as well. And we also don't have any real friends in the Liberals, so not too many allies at the state government level. And we do know that we have upcoming conversion practices legislation at the state level, so that will be a focus for us going forward. And we are always keen to have more women involved in Tasmania, so just reach out to us. Thanks.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Lauren. And yes, you can reach out to any of these groups through the email address that I'll pop up on the screen very shortly. We're going to finish up with Katie, who is recruiting for AAWAA, a Women's Action Alliance Victoria, and then we'll come back to me just for some final words. So, Katie, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Karen. So, hi, I'm Katie, co-founder and previous member of WAC 2.0. So, we're currently establishing a Women's Action Alliance in Victoria, which we are now recruiting for. So if you're interested in joining us, contact us through the link, which I'll post right now. So the link is in the chat if you'd like to get in contact with us and wanted to join. So right now, we're in the process of doing an environmental scan of the social and political landscape for women and girls in Victoria, with a focus on the harms of gender identity ideology / queer theory, prostitution, pornography, among other significant issues which affect women and girls in Victoria. So, and we'll also be involved in actions which will include submissions, banner drops, working groups, and other actions members might want to be a part of. So again, if you're interested, the link for the Women's Action Alliance group for Victoria is in the chat, which I can paste again, those that might have lost it. And yep, that's WAV.
Terrific. Thank you so much there, Katie. Yes, if you're interested in WAV, please get in touch. They're doing a recruitment round there. So thank you very much. These are just some final things to finish up on with what AY-waah has been up to. Various submissions and letters. Again, we target people in authority with duty of care for women and children. That's our main strategic focus. You can see here we've put in some submissions. One to the Australian Human Rights Framework Joint Parliamentary Committee there. We've also recently put in a submission on the proposed misinformation and disinformation New Powers for ACMA bill. That went in just recently last week. We've also put in a submission on the census topic consultation. We write letters as well. We've got one here to Senator Wong about what's going on in the UN or not going on in the UN for women and girls. So that's the kind of thing that we get involved with. We've also got, beg your pardon, that's our website there. You can read all of our submissions and letters from our website. Our motto is Together Getting It Done. We are hoping to hold a national conference next year, 4th to 5th of October, so please pop that date in your diaries. Information will come out through various channels. That's our email address and our web address. So please do get in touch. Thank you so much again to WDI Australia New Zealand for allowing us to come along today. We are AY-waah, the Affiliation of Australian Women's Action Alliances, and together we're getting it done. Thank you very much.